Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I always find it so strange whenever we have a big time guest on to talk about touchy subjects or interesting things. There's always some type of technical glitch, right? I'm gonna say it's the communist Chinese. That's what I'm gonna say.
I'm gonna agree with you 100%. Yeah, think I'm on the radar.
I bet you are. I bet you are. You're from the great state of Arkansas. We're dear friends with Sarah Sanders. You have a spectacular state, and a state that obviously has some really good members of Congress from it. We're big fans of Tom Cotton and the people who are there doing great work. It seems like an honest and straight shooting state.
Yeah, pretty much. Here's the interesting thing about Arkansas, punching way above our weight. We have every member of our congressional delegation is the chairman.
Is that so?
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened before. Certainly not in Arkansas, but I don't think if there's any state anywhere. And I remember when I first came into Congress, Texas had, I don't know, 7 or 8 gavels, but that's not their whole delegation. It was just in the House. There was maybe 5 that had gavels, which was a pretty big deal. So Texas had a lot of influence, but our entire state now is a chairman. So that's good for Arkansas.
Yeah, well done, man. What a power center, and what a change from just a few short decades ago when the Clintons were running the entire state.
Yeah, we were the last Southern state to get the memo, but when we did, we did, and it really happened in 2010. That was a tectonic shift for Arkansas.
Yeah, obviously you got to be extremely busy on the Intel committee. There are so many questions about intelligence and gathering, and I want to get to so many things on Russiagate and on Hillary Clinton's culpability there. And I think there's so many unique cross sections actually being from Arkansas. But I want to just start, since we did just run that Epstein polling, and since the Epstein question, Melania Trump is suing over it. They're obviously, I think, going to win it's going to be a monster defamation suit against Hunter Biden over it. The question that I had for you is about Jeffrey Epstein and his ties to Intel.
Yeah.
And I think this is, sort of at the heart of the issue, actually. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein had ties to the FBI and potentially the CIA. We know the Alex Acosta famous line here. And we know, obviously, that Ghislaine Maxwell's family had ties to Mossad. And so, through her father, Robert Maxwell. And so, given everything that's happening right now, can you perhaps elucidate for us just a little bit? Like, is there any fact pattern that you have discovered or that you know about of Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the intelligence community?
Well, we haven't seen anything that has been brought to our attention, but what I would say is that we're in a position, if we do, and we can go talk to the CIA about this. They've not brought it to our attention. It's swirling, in the public sphere. Everybody's sort of speculating about this, but we've not seen anything, have anything brought to our attention at this point to suggest that might be true. If it ever gets to that point, then most certainly we're going to pursue that. And if that means, either through oversight or hearings, whatever is in our purview to do to examine that and run that to ground, we would certainly do it. But at this point, we've really not seen anything concrete that bears that out. So, staying in our lane in the Intel committee, we, obviously there's a whole lot of stuff going on there with regard to DOJ, and the Judiciary Committee has authority there. But as it applies to Intel, we're always, antennas up and listening and paying attention. But so far, we've not seen anything or had anything brought to our attention that warrants any further investigation. If it does, we're ready to go if that presents itself.
Yeah, it just seems like a perfect clandestine honeypot operation with so many princes and prime ministers and sultans and world leaders. And it just seems like it would be an obvious op if you were looking.
If it were, it would be on a scale that we've never imagined before because of, as you mentioned, the number of people that are named is staggering. Now, I would also say, this is a great thing about being in America. I mean, the presumption of innocence. And so all the talk, it's interesting and it makes for fun dinner conversation and things like that. But the reality is, until you see actual evidence and until, we have to prove guilt, not prove innocence. The accused doesn't prove their innocence. The accuser has to prove their guilt. And we've just not seen anything at this point that would tell us he was an asset for this agency or that agency or whatever. If we get to that point, we're most definitely ready to go. but we haven't seen that yet. So at this point, it seems to be, I'm not trying to dismiss, sort of the public, open source intelligence, if you will, that exists out there, because open source is also a very valuable source in many cases. In fact, any intelligence agency will tell you that open source intelligence is extremely valuable, but we haven't seen anything tangible that ties any of them to intel agencies at this point.
Sure. What I think many people lean on is the Alex Acosta, and we've had many people who've worked with Alex Acosta on our program. We've had people who are friends of him and that say that he's not lying. He wouldn't be a liar, right, in saying that he was told to back off Epstein in this confounding and bewildering federal move that has no precedent in the year 2008 and 2006, 7, and 8, where Jeffrey Epstein was just allowed to walk free in the state of, from federal charges, and was given a slap on the wrist and the ability to exonerate everybody who's with him. This is actually what Ghislaine Maxwell's arguing right now. And Alex Acosta says he worked for Intel, so he's told to like back off. He worked for Intel. So we've explored that, and so that just seems to be one of the main hooks that this hangs on. Perhaps you could help us. Like, have you ever subpoenaed the CIA to say, hey, listen, like we want all the Epstein documents? Would you be in favor of that?
No, we haven't. We certainly have the authority. I don't think that requires a subpoena. I think it just requires, the kind of oversight relationship we have currently with the CIA is to just say, hey, we'd like to know if there's anything, and I'm certain we can do that. And I can tell you this, that there's a sea change taking place at the CIA under Director Ratcliffe versus previous directors. And so, I can't speak for Director Ratcliffe, but if we have evidence brought to us that suggests that there's a there, then we certainly would be able to go to John Ratcliffe and say, hey, can you help us out? We want to run this to ground, find out what, if there's anything further to know here about this and what what's being, speculated on in the open source.
Yeah, because so you would be in favor of that. You would be in favor of.
Sure. I would say though that I don't think it requires a subpoena. I think it's just sort of under a previous administration, it probably would have. But under this administration, this administration has been very transparent and committed to transparency. I don't think it's something that we would have to entertain. The
transparency has been astonishing and almost bewildering. I almost can't handle the amount of disclosures that happen on a near daily basis. Yeah. And you must be one of the busiest men in all of Congress, because every single day there is a new intel bombshell for the manipulation of American intelligence in order to sabotage the will of the American people, which by definition, I think is treasonous and is seditious conspiracy. That's what Stephen Miller calls it. Yeah. Given, I think maybe we can jump down into the details, but given the totality of what we've learned about Hillary Clinton, the Steele dossier, the intel community, and how they handled that in 2016 and beyond, where is your committee on review of this? So many members of Congress come on this program, bang their fist, and then say, you got to ask the Intel Committee. So here we are.
Yeah. So no, what we did was, in fact, for over the last 7 years, I've been trying to get our documents returned to us. The Russia hoax report that we did on that particular ICA, that was a year-long report on an ICA that took less than 3 weeks to produce. Typically, those ICAs take anywhere from 9 to 12 months to produce on something so big and overarching. But they did it in 3 weeks. We took a year to do a report on the 3-week study, and then they wouldn't give it to us. And so we finally got it. And what I ended up having to do was to essentially write a letter to President Trump saying, hey, can we have our document? And he said, yeah. And I think probably within 12 hours of him receiving that letter, we got the document. And so we got it. DNI Gabbard calls up. She says, hey, do you mind if I come over and read it? So she comes over to our secure space and reads it. And she says, it's worse than I expected. And like, yeah, it is really, it's really bad. And she said, would you object to us doing a classification review and possibly declassifying this for public consumption? And they have the authority to do that, and we don't. But she asked, can we do that? It's your document. Can we do that? So she did that. She did the classification review, and it came back pretty clean. you've seen it. It's about a 44-page document with about 330 odd footnotes. It's not the easiest thing to read. It's not just like reading 44 or 45 pages, because you've got to flip back and forth between these very detailed footnotes and things of that nature. So I thought they did a fantastic job, observed the appropriate protocols with regard to sources and methods and things like this. But I think it was essential first step in clarifying what actually took place in the Russia hoax, number one. Number two, this was a huge gesture to the American people that says we need to restore faith in our government, but specifically in the intelligence community, because I don't want to broad brush it here. You know, IC gets beat up a lot. This is a lot of the reason for it. But the reality is there are some good people there. There are, in fact, most people there are there for the right reasons. The problem that we ran into is that you had a cabal of middle management and senior executive service and appointees like John Brennan, Comey, Clapper, and others who conspired to do this 3-week-long ICA that had to come out post-election day, but prior to inauguration day. So the thing was commissioned in December and was released before inauguration day. And President Obama essentially commissioned this report. John Brennan, who is an analyst, used 5 willing accomplices. There were others that had dissenting views, and they were summarily dismissed. You can't play here because you're not willing to go along with this narrative. So he had 5 willing accomplices at maybe the GS-13 level, GS-15 level, or whatever. Well, here's the problem. Those people are still working there. That's what we have to address. Now, can we get John Brennan? Did he commit a crime? We're going to find that out. And there's been criminal referrals to the DOJ, and we're gonna find out. But the thing about it is, they're saying, well, it's a statute of limitations issue. Understand completely, except that an ongoing conspiracy really that statute of limitations doesn't apply, because this is an ongoing conspiracy. So therefore, they're going to have a hard time evading that. But there has been criminal referrals on a number of people involved in that particular ICA, and there's other things there. And I particularly point you to page 17 of our report.
It's on screen. It's on screen right now. It's on screen right now, Mr. Chairman. We're navigating to it right now, page 17, and you can reference it, and it'll be on screen.
Yeah, there were some things about Hillary Clinton that are just egregious, doesn't scratch the surface. And here's the other thing. It's the idea that the Russians wanted Trump to win is clearly a fabricated narrative. If anything, they preferred a president, Hillary Clinton. And here's why: because they had so much D-Rog on her that she was a soft target of manipulation. There was so much that they had on her. So the question you have to ask, if they had all this information on her, if they wanted Trump, why would they have not released all that derogatory information on her prior to election day, if in fact they were supporting a Trump election? And number one. Number two, if there was collusion between Trump and Russia, why was there no evidence of him asking for a release of that D-Rog that existed on her? I mean, none of that makes any sense. And so I would encourage people. It's out there in the open source. It's available for media to consume and for everyday Americans to consume. That was the whole point, was to create a level of transparency that the American people deserve. And it's there for you to read. So go ahead and read it, and then you can form your own opinions. But I can tell you that in my mind, the Russians had no preference for Donald Trump at all. And if they had a preference, it clearly points to Hillary Clinton.
So I want to return here to page 17, which is just absolute bombshell. So we have, and Klein, this is not page 17.
Yeah, that.
There we go.
There we go. Yep.
All right. So here's page 17. You talk about how Hillary Clinton had extraordinary and alarming health problems, and that it had a serious negative impact on her election prospects, and that she was really spiraling. So this is and then that Russia was looking to exploit this potentially.
Right.
I think this would make a lot of sense. How did you Was this something that so this is something that your committee determined based on interviews?
Right.
Based on,
There's a lot of information that we had for a year-long investigation into their ICA, and this is what we were able to come up with through various sources and interviews and so on. And again, the whole point of redactions is to protect sources and methods and personally identifying information, things of this nature. So you can see some redactions on there and want to be careful and conscious of the fact that we don't want to burn sources and methods. So the information is out there. I'm not going to comment as to sources and methods, but here's the information that you can see that the Russian agencies were what they believed. See, and a lot of people will say, well, they didn't, that's not true. They didn't have it. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, if the Russians believed it and were prepared to act on it. And if they believed it and had it in their possession and could have used it to their advantage to elect a President Trump, as the Democrats have asserted, why did they not? And the question is, by this page alone, you can see that they probably were withholding that so that they could use it on the other side of a Hillary election and manipulate her for their own purposes.
It makes a ton of sense. It also makes a lot of sense when you read through the now declassified annex of the Durham report, and you're able to see the entire Russian hacking and Steele dossier plot, and you're able to see everything from CrowdStrike doing media control to the FBI pouring oil on the fire, as it says there in the emails. And this follows your reporting right here that the SRV possessed campaign email discussing a plan approved by Secretary Clinton to link Putin and Russian hackers to candidate Trump in order to distract from the American public the Clinton email server scandal. That's exactly what the emails show. And it shows that Leonard Bernardo, the main lawyer for the Open Society Foundation, George Soros connected, was critical in actioning all of this. And so I guess that begs the question, what does this say about the DNC email hack?
Well, so the Durham Annex validates this.
Yes.
So this is not
to the letter. Yes.
Right, this is not just our reporting based on, our staff doing that intensive year-long review of that, politically driven ICA. No, this is also validated by, from a separate source, the Durham Annex basically corroborates everything that's said here. And you think about this, go back to when Durham first came out with his report, there was no classified annex released to the American people. So the Democrats were getting on board saying, okay, well, Durham didn't find anything.
Yeah.
Well, Durham didn't find anything that he could release to the American people. But now fast forward to 2025 and the Durham Annex is released, and it corroborates everything that our staff found in the course of their investigation from a separate source that the Democrats back then, when it was being talked about after the completion of the Durham report, that they were like, okay, see, nothing to see here. Well, now they're singing a different tune.
Was there even a hack of the DNC? Or did somebody inside of the DNC, for whatever their reason, like leak this true information? I mean, do you believe that the emails are real that were leaked?
Well, so it's quite possible. I mean, look, we've done what we think we should have done, and that is to request our report. It was reviewed appropriately for classification and then released publicly so that the American people could form their own opinions. Because in spite of all these years, there are still people, and you can put this in evidence in front of them, that still believe what CNN spun, what Comey and others spun. They still believe it. And here's the evidence from multiple sources that prove that was wrong. And so the American people, we have been subjected to a political hoax like no other in history. I mean, you can go back through, political hoaxes and political chicanery for decades, since time began, and nothing compares to this. This is unbelievable.
Yes. I just want to say, like, well done. Like, having the rock ribs to live through this and know that all of this was classified, all the truth was classified when everyone was saying the opposite, and not go insane. I would have gone crazy. And
we knew it for 8 years.
And so did the president. Yeah.
Right. And that's why he didn't delay when we asked for the documents. He said, yep.
Well done.
12 hours later, we have them.
Well done. I want your take on this in conclusion. Can you please classify what you believe the Steele dossier actually was? based on our reading, and Mr. Chairman, I just went to community college. I don't claim to be a particularly smart person, but based on my reading of it and based on my knowledge about the Steele dossier, this was a piece of material that was created by Russian spies through a man who's working for and on the payroll of sanctioned Russian oligarchs, Christopher Steele. This was intended in order to deceive and in order to kneecap the American public. It is, by every definition, Russian disinformation. And it was written in a way that was truly using foreign disinformation to commit an espionage almost on the American public.
Right.
And to kneecap a U.S. president elected.
Right. Yeah.
And so it seems like by every nature, a seditious and treasonous document. I mean, and truly scandalized that it is listed in these annexes as the original source material to launch these investigations and the predicate for the ICA. But I'll get off my box here, please. You're the expert. Like, how do you classify the Steele? Should that be the key piece of evidence when brought forward in prosecutions?
So a couple of things to unpack. Number one, Brennan said that the Steele dossier had no bearing on the ICA. In fact, it was foundational to the ICA.
Yes.
Number
yes.
one. Number two, this Steele dossier was fabricated. It was an op. It was paid for by the Clinton campaign. Steele dossier, Christopher Steele was he was discredited. He was known to be not a reliable source, but he was valuable in that he could collect some information, and then on the back end they could say, well, he had been a confidential informant or whatever it was, a source for various intelligence agencies, which ought to tell you something about the intelligence agencies under people like Comey, under the FBI, because he was their source. That ought to tell you something about the FBI under previous direction, that they were willing to take a discredited individual and take his information because it was valuable to them from a political perspective, how they could shape a narrative. Then the second thing to remember on that particular one is that they used the media. So what they did, they put this out to the media, and then the media reports it, and they go, oh, as if they didn't know. Oh, the media is reporting this, we better investigate. So they used the media. And now, look, I'm going to say, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they were unwitting, but they weren't. I mean, these people on the inside, they've got contacts in the media. They know how to drop stuff for effect and get it out there. So the media were not unwitting accomplices in this whole deal. They found a source that it was Yahoo, I believe, is who they leaked it to initially. And Yahoo goes with it. And the next thing you know, every legacy media outlet in the country is going, what about it? What about it? And the FBI, oh, well, this is really bad. We better investigate. So it was planted. That seed was planted to sprout, and it did, for the effect of spinning the narrative on Russia collusion that Trump is an asset of Vladimir Putin.
Mr. Chair,
it persists, and it's a travesty. It's a hoax, and enough is enough. That's why we did what we did. We got to get this out there, and the American people need to know the truth.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, because you're handing off to the great Darrell Issa, who's up right after you, but I'd love to have you hand the baton to him. What culpability do the Clintons have here, in your estimation?
Well, so I'm not an attorney. There have been the criminal referrals have been made to DOJ, and I think and under FBI Director Patel and AG Pam Bondi, I feel comfortable that the full weight of the judicial system will come down on those bad actors. We've already seen that the precedent of having been a president or a first lady is over. When they raided Mar-a-Lago looking for what? We don't know. They basically said former presidents, they just like Adam Schiff, no one's above the law, even you, Adam Schiff. So another subject, and love to come back and talk to you about that.
They were looking for your documents, Mr. Chairman.
100%.
That's what they were looking for. They were looking for your report, Mr. Chairman.
If we're going to do that, if we're going to raid Mar-a-Lago, then all bets are off.
Yep. Well done. Everybody needs to go and follow immediately the great Rick Crawford. He's from Arkansas. He's just one of those spectacular members of Congress who just puts his head down and isn't about like the flair and the fame. He's about like getting the work done. He's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. He's from the great state of Arkansas. And boy, howdy. Got to tell you, I hope that you're back soon, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Vinny. Thanks.
Godspeed.